everybody, it is Dean Z speaking to you from Jeffries Hall again at the University of Michigan Law School. Episode 2 of our Q&A segment. We got a lot of questions that we are still in the midst of answering, so I'm just going to dive right in. First question was, any tips for veteran applicants? Yes, I do have tips. Every industry has its own jargon, right? But military has so much jargon, and a lot of it is very opaque to, civilians who have not been in the military. So step back when you are describing what your jobs are on your resume. Step back and make sure that it is accessible to people who don't have your particular experience. And I bet this will feel uncomfortable to people, but try to take out as much jargon as possible and make it plain English to the extent you can. And just, make sure that you are making clear why your work experience is going to be useful in this other completely different context. And to be clear, I think veteran experience is incredibly useful, but I see a huge range of how clear it is to me when people are describing their jobs and stuff in an application. And then in terms of your essays, some people can have some pretty intense experiences in the military, and I wouldn't say don't talk about those, but I'd also just say, remember, you're talking to people who haven't had those experiences, for whom this may be, pretty intense to read. So just think about who your audience is. And but you've had really important work experience, plus you have this record of service, and I think both of those are incredibly valuable in the world of law school admissions. And just do your best to convey it, recognizing that the people reading it are not going to be experts. And then there is this great organization that you probably know about called Service to School. And a lot of our students volunteer with that as mentors and assisting people who are applying. So if you're not aware of that, you should check that out. Next, got an interesting question here. I'm curious about how Michigan values candidates. For example, if one had previously been a police officer, held an AAS in criminal justice, a bachelor's in IT/computer programming, would this present as an appealing candidate profile for Michigan? This profile seems to hold strong breadth and diverse experience, but I wonder how that is valued compared to depth. Is working directly in a law-related field valued on par with experiences such as internships? So there's a lot happening in this question. So first of all, I'd say just these specific examples, very interesting. Please apply. I will tell you that there are certain jobs that our faculty get super excited about if they are in the class. And one of those is police officer. Very rare to get police officer applicants, but our criminal law faculty just lose their damn minds when it happens. They're so excited. So that is very much valued. And consider that. And then, of course, computer programming as a background, very useful in combination with law. So yes, these are all good things, but this is that question is extremely specific to the person writing it. And I think so I'd like to sort of zoom out and ask, look at what I think is the underlying question, which is, I've had a range of maybe unusual experiences. How do you feel about that? We love that. So it's not an either or. It's not like, breadth versus depth. It can be, some people will have breadth, some people will have depth. And your job as an applicant is to explain to the admissions office why we should be valuing the particular experience you have. Now, in this particular instance, police officer, you don't need to explain it because I already told you that's something that I'm already prepared to believe is very appealing. But there's a whole lot of jobs out there. So you should be thinking when you are applying to law school, what is it about me that I think they should want? And make your case. So breadth, depth, it's all good. I hope that's helpful. The next question we have is from someone who is a dual citizen of the US and France. And they grew up first learning French and then didn't start learning English till second grade, but they are fully fluent in both. Doesn't want to say that English is their second language, but it's also not the thing that they have focused on their whole life either. And so, and they're specifically interested in how this might affect the way someone interprets their LSAT score. So when you're not a native English speaker, I would definitely expect your LSAT score to be affected by that, by a little bit. Now, it's hard to judge. It's like how, is it, it's just there's no formula for it, right? So I would expect to see it maybe a little depressed than if that same person were a native English speaker, but it's hard, there's no formula, as I say. So how do you present yourself in this case? I mean, I think you should, first of all, say that, first of all, you are fluent in English, and you're not going to want to be applying to law school unless you are fluent in English, but it may have affected your LSAT score. So I think the way I would handle this is really not talking so much about when you learned English, but adding an LSAT addendum saying, hey, my LSAT score is blah. I learned French first, and I think that has had some effect. Even though I am fluent in English now, I think that has had some effect on my ability to, excel on the LSAT. And I think that's where I would leave it. Hope that's helpful. All right, here's one that I feel like people are going to like. Dear Dean Z, is there any hope for a splitter with a 2.85 undergrad GPA and possibly the easiest major of all time, theater? I just love this person's sense of humor. That's a cute way to ask this question. I watched the video where you reviewed splitter applications, but the lowest one was still higher than what I'm working with. I know admissions look at the applications as a whole, but my GPA is really bad. I have 4 years of work experience, but it feels like even if I got a 180 on the LSAT, things are not looking too great. How far can a strong LSAT and essay take someone if their work experience is not super impressive? An undergrad GPA from a few years ago majorly sucks. And then it was signed, thanks, Scrappy Hot Mess. Well, Scrappy Hot Mess, I'm just going to tell you, love your writing style, so that's working well for you. So I actually looked this up since, the question was, is there any hope? I have, yes, I have admitted people with a 2.85 and even lower. Now, it's not a lot of people. It's 22 people over the course of my 25 years. And then there were 36 other people who I admitted as transfers who had lower GPAs than 2.85. So the first thing I'd say is, I recognize I did not thrive in my undergrad experience. I think I've said that about 1 billion times on various videos. So, and I got to law school and I was ready, man. I loved law school. I was ready. And my GPA here was much better than my undergraduate GPA. So if things do not work out in terms of getting into your dream school with your 180 and your 285, and you go to another school and indeed you do, shoot the lights out there, you can always think about transferring. Now, you may not want to, because maybe you will have really had a great experience there and you will be in the position that you want to be in terms of your career and so on and so forth. So I guess this is a little bit of a don't get too tied to a dream school, because there's lots of ways to reach, where you want to go, reach your dreams. But also, yeah, there are people who are, I think they call them super splitters in Reddit parlance, and who can shine in a pool and still get in. Do I know that will be you? Of course, I cannot say that. But I got to say, your writing style is great, and the fact that you recognize this weakness seems very promising. I think being self-aware of one's weaknesses in terms of the application process is really a huge advantage to you. So, yeah, I can't, I don't know, but it is definitely possible. So 22 people out there. And one of them is one of my favorite alum of all time. Actually, it's funny. I was looking at the list of people, and a lot of them are people I'm like, I forgot they had that GPA. Like the people who really, really did well here and who I'm thrilled are our alumni. I know Ed is not watching this, but Ed was my first extremely low GPA, and I've never regretted it. Okay, next I have a few questions from someone named Maxon. They say, my personal statement is 4 full pages, and it's my understanding that although this length is allowed, it's generally better to be more concise. It jumps between a handful of stories that explain how I decided to go to college, what I did in college, who inspired me to be a lawyer, and my thoughts on what I'm looking for in my future legal career. My problem is it's very long-winded because I use a lot of figurative language to dress up my stories. I feel like I should remove this to save space for the big bullet point details, but without it, I feel my writing comes across as bland and monotone. So my question is, would admissions just want this to be as concise as I can make it, or is it valuable in my statement to work in some character to my stories? This is it, man. This is the question. This is the question for all writing. How do you edit it down and still have some verve to your writing? Yeah, you don't want it to be bland and monotone. Your instinct there is good. But you still need to edit it down. 4 pages is too long. And I don't know that from the way you describe it, it seems like a pretty standard journey to law school. Maybe not all of it needs to be in there. Like, you need to keep working at it. And I'd say get it down to 3 pages. I think you can definitely get rid of a page, she said, not having read any of it. But, that's just, that's how it goes. And you don't have to have a lot of figurative language either to have language that is interesting to read and that, really moves along sort of zippily. And in fact, figurative language can kind of mire down a reader, right? You're just reading, wading through a lot of adverbs and adjectives. So it doesn't always make it better writing. I would say show this to someone whose writing you really admire or who you think is really strong, and they can probably take a little red pen to it and mark that up and give you some ideas and about what it doesn't need to be in there. But your struggle, Maxon, is the struggle of everybody who's writing a personal statement. So I appreciate you asking that question. Maxon also asks a second question. I'm planning on writing the Why Michigan essay. Is it worth mentioning that your videos, mine, helped Maxon figure out this whole process, or would that be seen as an attempt to flatter? I already said I love flattery, but we'll get to that. I would have had Michigan for many reasons as my number one regardless. Love you, Maxon. And I mostly focus on those reasons in my essay. Obviously, if you were flattered by it, I'm happy to pay respect to your work, but I only want to address it when speaking to the more personal connections to the school of my law school journey this far. So I say I love flattery, but I hope is clear. I'm kind of joking. I mean, everybody loves to be complimented, so thank you. That was very nice of you. I do think sometimes it's useful to say, like, this is how I found out about the school. Like, if you're telling a story, it's like, I really did not know Michigan. I'm from the coast or wherever, and I had not thought of it, and then I found these, and then I learned more. But no, you do not need to be flattering me in these essays, and you don't need to be blowing smoke about Michigan in general either. Like, I, of course, think it's a lovely school. It's a great school. It's the best school in the universe as far as I'm concerned. That's why I, love working here. But you don't need to, I'm really trying to figure out what's in your head as opposed to having you, be like, oh, you're the best. So I appreciate you asking that, and it is absolutely not necessary to try to flatter me. And as a practical matter, other people read the essays before they come to me. So if you make them, want to throw up, they won't enjoy it. So, just take that into account. So don't be too flattering of me because they like giving me grief, All right, we're almost to the end here. Ali asks, does early decision affect your need-based aid outcome? Not at Michigan. No, it does not. Like, need-based aid is based on exclusively on economic factors, and it does not affect that calculus at all. The problem with early decision and aid in general is that you just don't have the opportunity to compare, packages from different schools. So that's the disadvantage. But it does not go into. We do not give you less money because you applied early decision, if that makes any sense. Okay. Next, Emmanuel asks, what are your thoughts on JD-MBAs and other joint programs? Are they worth it? I think the JD-MBA is an excellent program. This is how I think of it. I feel like, boiled down, JDs teach you all the reasons to say no to something, and MBAs teach you all the reasons to say yes to something. And so the combination of those two trainings is very powerful. But But there are lots of reasons to pursue dual degrees, or at least taking classes outside of a law school that can be very good for your career. So, but I do think it only makes sense if it makes sense for your career, right? Like by the time you're going to law school, you should be pretty focused on what you're going to do with that degree and how it's going to play out in your future. So if you want to be a big law corporate lawyer, doing a JD-MSW does not make a lot of sense. That MSW is almost certainly not going to be helpful for you in your corporate law career. If you want to be a public defender, being a legal aid attorney, working with juvenile rights, jobs like that, a JD-MSW, I should say a Master's of Social Work. I don't know why. I just lapsed into jargon myself. That can be a huge advantage. So you have to think about what you want to do with your career, and does the dual degree make sense in that context? And if it's not clear to you whether it makes sense, you might want to talk to a faculty member in a particular field or something like that. Or look for people who are doing the kinds of jobs you imagine yourself doing, and see, do any of them have other degrees besides a JD, and how might that work out? Okay, so thanks for that question. Next, Carla asks, what if one's undergrad background was in a pre-med related discipline, and thus all their internships and jobs aren't legal related but STEM related? Will this disadvantage a law school applicant? Does your work experience have to contain jobs related to the legal field and specifically, I think they mean, given the undergrad circumstances? It will not hold you back. It is perfectly fine not to have had specific legal work experience. So thanks for asking that. But you should recognize that underlying the reading of any application, you're wondering, why does this person want to go to law school? So if you've had no exposure to law, but you know you want to go to law school, you should definitely be making that explicit somewhere in your essays or something, so that it doesn't look like, ugh, I'm just here because I definitely don't want to be a doctor. You know what I mean? Like, make it clear that this is an affirmative choice as opposed to just running away from some other choice. Okay, last question from Teddy. What do you think about including work from a gap year before college? That's a great question, because I always say life begins at college. Don't give me your high school information. And then in this gap year before college, I'm guessing Teddy's asking this because he thinks he did something that is interesting and that will be intriguing to admissions officers. And if that is your case, then yeah, I think you should include it, right? If you spend a year, I don't know, abroad or what, I don't know. I can't think of no possible jobs that would be in that gap year now that I'm on the spot here. But if it's something interesting and good, yes, include it. And make sure it's clear that it's a gap year, post high school. Yeah, I think I'd like to see that. So, all right, we have come to the end of our questions. And now, grammar. Okay. Pique in the sentence, that really piqued my curiosity. That word is spelled P-I-Q-U-E. It is a completely different word than P-E-A-K, which means peak, like a mountain peak. And sometimes I think it gets confused because it piqued my curiosity, and people think like, oh, P-E-A-K, because it's like, it made my curiosity higher, right? Like high, like a peak. But that's not it. Pique, P-I-Q-U-E, means like it stimulated my curiosity. It made something happen. So do not write, I think the word P-E-A-K-E-D, I can't think of no. If you summited a mountain, then maybe you peaked it? No, I don't know, maybe. I don't think you actually ever need to use it. If you're saying peaked past tense, you probably mean the Q-U-E kind of peak. And that's just an example of, I feel like I always understand when people make that mistake, I always understand what they're trying to say, so it's not a question of my, not grasping what is being conveyed. But it just looks a little, it looks a little sloppy, right? So this is what I'm here for, just trying to help you avoid all those unnecessary missteps that one might make when in the writing. So I hope that is useful to you. I hope I have piqued your curiosity about grammar with that example. Okay, all right, I'm going to stop now. So thank you as always for watching. Thank you to Dustin for spending time with me on this very beautiful afternoon. And If you have questions or comments, please leave them below or send them to us at law.jd.admissions@umich.edu and put vlog in the subject line. And may I say, I really love your questions. I hope the fact that I have spent 2 episodes answering your questions illustrates how much we love getting the questions. Admissions is so broad, and most of the topics I talk about are themselves broad, like personal statements, so broad. So I really love knowing what is on your mind and how can I be useful to you. So please, if you have anything you want to hear about, please let me know, and I will do my best to address it. So thanks, as always, for watching. And wherever you go, go blue.